You erased me like I never existed.
The first sign something was wrong wasn't the scar running down the left side of my wife's face. It was the way she flinched when our 12-year-old son Tommy tried to hug her at the military base gates. "Easy there, sport," I said, pulling Tommy back as the woman in army fatigue stared at us like we were strangers. "Mom's probably tired from the flight." But this wasn't tired. This was something else entirely. I'm Jack Morrison, and I've been married to Captain Sarah Morrison for 15 years. I know every freckle on her face, every scar from her childhood mishaps, every expression she makes when she's happy, sad, or plotting something. The woman standing in front of us at Fort Brennan looked exactly like Sarah. Same auburn hair, same green eyes, same height and build. But when she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. And when Tommy called her mom, she hesitated just a fraction too long. "Hello, Jack," she said, and even her voice was wrong, too formal, too careful. "Sarah," I replied, studying her face. The scar was new, running from her left temple down to her jaw. It looked old, though, maybe 6 months healed. Rough deployment? You could say that. She shouldered her duffel bag. "Let's go home." Tommy chattered excitedly in the back seat of our Honda Pilot as we drove through downtown Millbrook, Massachusetts. He told Mom about his baseball season, his grades, the new Stephen King book he'd been reading. The woman nodded and made appropriate sounds, but I caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. She was studying Tommy like she was memorizing him. "Remember how you used to read me those scary stories?" Tommy asked. "The ones about the haunted house?" The woman, and I was becoming more certain by the minute that this wasn't my wife, looked blank for a moment. "Of course," she said finally. "Maybe we can do that again soon." Sarah hated horror stories, always had. She'd leave the room when Tommy and I watched scary movies together. I pulled into our driveway on Maple Street, a tree-lined road full of modest two-story homes built in the 1960s. Our house was pale yellow with white trim, nothing fancy, but comfortable. Sarah had always loved this house, called it her sanctuary. The woman stared at it like she'd never seen it before. "Honey," I said carefully, "why don't you go get settled? I'll grab some groceries for dinner." "That sounds good," she replied, still staring at the house. I drove to the Hannaford supermarket on Main Street, my mind racing. Either my wife had suffered some kind of traumatic brain injury that had affected her memory and personality, or the woman in my house wasn't Sarah at all. I called my old partner from the police force, Danny Rodriguez, who now ran a private investigation business. "Danny, it's Jack. I need a favor, and it's going to sound crazy." "Lay it on me, brother. I need you to find out everything you can about my wife's deployment. Where she's been, what happened to her, medical records, if you can get them." "Jack, what's going on?" I told him about the woman at the base, the scar, the strange behavior. Danny listened without interrupting. "You know Sarah has a twin sister, right?" he said when I finished. My stomach went cold. "What?" "Emma Morrison, identical twin. They've been estranged for years, some kind of family drama. Sarah never mentioned her?" "Never." My hands were shaking. "Danny, I think Emma is in my house right now, pretending to be my wife. Where's the real Sarah? That's what I need you to find out." I drove home in a daze. 15 years of marriage, and Sarah had never once mentioned having a twin sister. What else didn't I know about my wife? The woman was in our bedroom when I got back, going through Sarah's dresser drawers with the methodical precision of someone conducting a search. "Find what you're looking for, Emma?" I asked from the doorway. She spun around, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw calculation in her eyes and something else, desperation. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "Cut the act. I know you're not Sarah. I know about the twin sister she never bothered to mention. What I don't know is where my wife is and why you're here." Emma Morrison sat down heavily on the bed. Up close, I could see the differences now that I knew what to look for. The scar, obviously, but also the way she held herself, more rigid than Sarah's natural grace. Her hands were softer, too. Sarah's were calloused from years of military training. "She's not coming back, Jack," Emma said quietly. "What do you mean she's not coming back?" "I mean she's decided she doesn't want this life anymore. The suburban house, the husband who manages a hardware store, the kid who reads too much. She wants something bigger." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're lying." Emma pulled out a phone, not Sarah's phone, a different one, and showed me a text message thread. The contact was listed as S. The messages made my stomach turn. Sarah talking about how bored she was, how she'd outgrown her small town life, how she'd found someone who understood her ambitions. Someone named Colin. Who's Colin? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. Colin Reeve. Defense contractor, very wealthy, very connected. They met during her deployment. He's offered her a new life, and she's taking it. Then why are you here? Emma's smile was bitter. Because Sarah asked me to come clean up her mess. Make sure you and Tommy were okay. Help with the transition. She thought it would be easier if you thought she was dead or missing, rather than just gone. I stared at this woman who looked exactly like my wife, but was a complete stranger. She sent you to lie to us. She sent me to spare you the humiliation of being publicly abandoned. The rage that had been building in my chest finally exploded. Get out! Jack! Get out of my house. Now! Before I call the police and have you arrested for fraud or identity theft or whatever the heck this is. Emma stood up slowly. Sarah thought you'd react this way. She said you never could handle the truth about anything. The truth? You want the truth through? The truth is that my wife is a coward who sent her sister to do her dirty work instead of facing me herself. The truth is that she's destroying our son's life because she's having some kind of midlife crisis. The truth is that I'm going to find her, and when I do, she's going to wish she'd handled this like an adult. Emma picked up her duffel bag. She's not coming back, Jack. Let it go. We'll see about that. After Emma left, I sat Tommy down in the living room. He was sprawled on the couch reading his Stephen King book, completely unaware that his world had just imploded. Tommy, we need to talk. He looked up and I saw Sarah's eyes in his face. It nearly broke my heart. That wasn't Mom, was it? He said quietly. Smart kid, too smart sometimes. No, buddy, that was your mom's sister. Your mom is... She's dealing with some problems right now. Is she coming home? I wanted to lie to protect him, but Tommy deserved better than that. I don't know, but I'm going to find out what's going on, okay? And no matter what happens, you and I are going to be fine. He nodded solemnly. Can I still finish my book? Yeah, you can finish your book. That night after Tommy went to bed, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and Sarah's laptop. She'd left it behind, probably figuring she wouldn't need it for her new life with Colin, whatever his name was. It took me 3 tries to guess her password. Tommy's Mom 2010. The year he was born. Her email was a treasure trove of information. Hundreds of messages between Sarah and Colin Reeve, dating back 8 months. The early ones were professional. He was a civilian contractor working with her unit on some kind of logistics project. But they quickly became personal, then intimate, then explicit. I read every single message, each one feeling like a knife to the gut. Sarah complaining about our boring life in Millbrook. Sarah saying she'd married too young and never got to explore her potential. Sarah describing intimate details of our marriage and mocking them for Colin's amusement. But the worst was a message from 3 weeks ago. I can't keep pretending anymore. I want out, but I don't want to hurt Jack and Tommy. Maybe if I just disappear, it would be easier for everyone. Colin's response? I know someone who could help with that. My ex-wife's sister is an actress, very good at playing roles. Not an actress, a con artist. Emma wasn't Sarah's twin sister. She was Colin's ex-sister-in-law, hired to play a part. The deception was even deeper than I'd thought. I spent the rest of the night reading everything I could find about Colin Reeve. 42 years old, CEO of Reeve Defense Solutions, a private military contracting firm. Divorced, no kids, houses in Boston, and Martha's Vineyard. Net worth estimated at $50 million. He collected vintage cars and young military officers, apparently. By morning, I had a plan. Danny Rodriguez showed up at my house at 7 a.m. with coffee and bagels, looking like he hadn't slept much either. Tell me you've got good news, I said, letting him in. Define good. He handed me a coffee. The woman who came to your house yesterday isn't Sarah's twin sister. Sarah doesn't have a twin sister. Her name is Emma Caldwell, and she's a professional con artist with a rap sheet going back 15 years. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. She's good at what she does. Colin Reeve hired her. That's my guess. I did some digging on Mr. Reeve, too. Guy's a piece of work. 3 marriages all ended badly. Has a thing for women in uniform. His second wife was a Navy lieutenant. Third was an Air Force captain. Looks like your Sarah is just the latest in a pattern. I felt sick. Where is she, Danny? That's where it gets interesting. According to official Army records, Captain Sarah Morrison is currently on extended leave for medical reasons. But she's not at any military medical facility, and she's not at any of Reeves' known addresses. So where is she? Danny pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. Sarah and Colin at what looked like a resort, both of them tanned and smiling. Sarah was wearing a white sundress I'd never seen before, and she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. The Breakers Resort in Palm Beach. This was taken 3 days ago. The betrayal hit me all over again. While Emma was in my house pretending to be Sarah, my actual wife was living it up at a 5-star resort with her new boyfriend. I want to confront her, I said. Jack, think about this. What's your endgame here? You storm down to Florida, make a scene, and then what? You can't force her to come home. I can force her to face what she's done. To Tommy, to me, to our marriage. She doesn't get to just disappear and pretend we never existed. Danny sighed. Okay, but we do this smart. No crazy stuff, no getting arrested. We gather evidence, document everything, and we make sure you come out of this divorce with custody of Tommy and everything else you're entitled to. You think she'll fight for custody? Guys like Reeve don't want other people's kids around. My guess is she'll sign whatever you put in front of her as long as you don't make waves about the money. But I wasn't interested in making this easy for Sarah. She'd humiliated me, lied to our son, and hired a criminal to impersonate her. She was going to pay for all of it. I called my boss at Morrison Hardware. Yeah, I know. The irony wasn't lost on me that I managed a store with my own last name, and told him I needed a few days off for a family emergency. Then I booked a flight to West Palm Beach. Tommy was staying with my sister Jennifer while I was gone. I told him I was going to find his mom and get some answers. Bring her home, Dad, he said. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that probably wasn't going to happen. The Breakers Resort was exactly the kind of place I'd expect Colin Reeve to stay. Old money elegance, the kind of place where a night's stay cost more than I made in a week. I couldn't afford to stay there, but I could afford to hang around the bar and restaurant. It took me 6 hours of nursing overpriced drinks and pretending to read a newspaper before I spotted them. Sarah looked incredible. Her hair was longer than when she'd left for deployment, highlighted and styled. She was wearing designer clothes and jewelry I'd never seen before. She looked like a different person, confident, sophisticated, expensive. Colin was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of guy who'd never worked a day of manual labor in his life, but somehow projected authority. He wore his wealth casually, like a well-tailored jacket. They were sitting at a corner table in the resort's Ocean View restaurant, holding hands and talking quietly. Sarah was laughing at something Colin said, her face lit up with genuine joy. I'd never seen her look at me that way. I took out my phone and started recording video. Evidence for the divorce proceedings, Danny had said. Document everything. But as I watched my wife of 15 years flirt with another man, documentation was the last thing on my mind. I walked over to their table. Hello, Sarah. She looked up and the color drained from her face. Colin looked annoyed, like I was a waiter interrupting their meal. Jack, Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Looking for my wife. Funny thing, a woman showed up at our house yesterday claiming to be you. Turned out to be a con artist named Emma Caldwell. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Colin started to stand up. I think you should leave. I think you should shut up, I replied, not taking my eyes off Sarah. We're not divorced yet, so this is still a conversation between husband and wife. Sarah found her voice. Jack, please. Not here. Where then? You didn't leave a forwarding address when you decided to abandon your family. Other diners were starting to stare. The restaurant manager was heading our way, looking concerned. Fine, Sarah said. Let's talk, but not here. We ended up on the beach behind the resort. Colin had wanted to come with us, but Sarah told him to wait at the hotel. Smart move. I was barely keeping my temper in check as it was. How long? I asked. Jack, how long have you been planning this? The affair, the disappearing act, hiring someone to impersonate you? Sarah sat down on a piece of driftwood and stared out at the ocean. 8 months. Since you met Colin. Since I remembered what it felt like to be excited about life. The words stung, but I pushed forward. What about Tommy? Tommy will be fine. Kids are resilient. Tommy thinks his mother is dead or missing. He has no idea you're down here playing house with your boyfriend. For the first time, Sarah looked ashamed. I thought it would be easier this way. Easier for who? You hired a criminal to lie to your own son. I hired Emma to help with the transition, to make sure you and Tommy were okay. By pretending to be you? By lying to us? Sarah stood up and faced me. What did you want me to do, Jack? Come home and tell you I'd fallen in love with someone else? Sit you down and explain that I'd outgrown our little life in Millbrook? That I wanted more than a husband who manages a hardware store and a son who reminds me every day of the choices I made when I was too young to know better? The words hit like physical blows. Tommy reminds you of bad choices? I got pregnant when I was 24. I married you because it was the right thing to do, not because I was madly in love. I've spent 15 years trying to convince myself I was happy. And now? Now I know what happy actually feels like. I stared at this woman who looked like my wife but sounded like a stranger. What about your military career, your AWOL? Colin has connections. My resignation will be processed as a medical discharge, PTSD from my deployment. More lies. Necessary lies. The casual way she said it made my blood boil. You're going to destroy your son's life because you're having a midlife crisis. I'm going to start living my life because I finally can. With Colin's money. Colin offers me a future, travel, excitement, a chance to be someone other than a small-town wife and mother. He's using you, Sarah. Danny did some research. You're the fourth military officer he's had an affair with. This is a pattern for him. Sarah's jaw tightened. You had me investigated? I had to find out where my wife was. I'm not your wife anymore, Jack. I haven't been for a long time. You're still wearing your wedding ring. She looked down at her left hand, then slowly pulled off the ring I'd saved for 6 months to buy. She handed it to me. There, now it's official. I took the ring and something inside me snapped. Not into rage, that would come later. Into cold, calculating anger. You're right, I said. We're not married anymore, which means you have no claim to anything I've built. The house is in my name. The savings account is in my name. Tommy's college fund is in my name. Jack, you want to walk away from your family? Fine. But you don't get to take anything with you. And you don't get to come back when Colin gets bored and moves on to the next uniform. That's not going to happen. We'll see. I started walking back toward the resort. Jack, wait. I turned around. Sarah was standing in the sand, looking small and uncertain for the first time since I'd found her. What about Tommy? What about him? I want to see him, to explain. You had your chance to explain. You sent a con artist instead. I'm still his mother. No, I said. His mother wouldn't have done this. I don't know who you are anymore, but you're not the woman who gave birth to my son. I left her standing on the beach and walked back to the resort. Colin was waiting in the lobby, looking anxious. Everything okay? He asked. Just peachy, I replied. By the way, you might want to ask Sarah about her first husband. And her second one. Oh, wait, that would be me. I'm the first husband, the one she forgot to mention. Colin's face went white. She said she was divorced. A lot of that going around. I walked away, leaving Colin to figure out that his new girlfriend had lied to him, too. The flight back to Boston gave me time to think. Sarah had made her choice, and now I was going to make mine. She wanted out of our marriage? Fine, but she was going to pay for the way she'd handled it. By the time I landed at Logan Airport, I had a plan. Danny was waiting for me at baggage claim with a grim expression. How'd it go? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. She's not coming home, and she doesn't want to. I'm sorry, Jack. Don't be. I'm done being sorry. Now I'm getting even. We drove back to Millbrook in Danny's car, while I filled him in on the conversation with Sarah and my encounter with Colin. So what's the play? Danny asked. First, I file for divorce and full custody. Sarah's abandoned her family, committed fraud by hiring Emma to impersonate her, and she's AWOL from the Army. No judge in the country is going to give her custody. What about visitation? She can visit Tommy when he's 18 and old enough to decide for himself if he wants a relationship with her. That's harsh, Jack. Not as harsh as hiring a con artist to lie to your own son. Danny nodded. What else? I want you to keep digging into Colin Reeve. Financial records, business dealings, personal life, everything. Looking for what? Leverage. Sarah thinks she's found her Prince Charming. I want to show her what kind of man she's really involved with. And then I'm going to destroy both of them. The next morning, I met with Margaret O'Sullivan, the best divorce attorney in Millbrook. She was a tough Irish woman in her 60s who had been practicing family law for 30 years. This is one of the more unusual cases I've seen, she said after I'd explained the situation. Your wife hiring someone to impersonate her adds a criminal element that will work strongly in your favor. What are my chances of getting full custody? With her abandonment of the child and the fraud, I'd say 95%. The question is whether she'll fight it. She won't. She doesn't want Tommy interfering with her new life. Margaret raised an eyebrow. You sound very certain of that. I know my wife, or I thought I did. We filed the divorce papers that afternoon, along with a petition for emergency custody of Tommy. Sarah would be served within the week. But I wasn't done. That evening, I called the FBI field office in Boston and reported Emma Caldwell for identity theft and fraud. I had video of her impersonating Sarah, along with evidence that she'd been paid by Colin Reeve to commit the crime. Then I called the Army's Criminal Investigation Division and reported Sarah for desertion and fraudulent medical claims. By the end of the week, both women were going to have federal agents looking for them. But my masterpiece was still to come. Danny had been busy digging into Colin Reeve's background, and what he'd found was a goldmine. Reeve Defense Solutions was under investigation by the Department of Defense for overcharging on military contracts. Colin personally was being investigated by the IRS for tax evasion. His company was also facing a wrongful death lawsuit from the family of a soldier ended when faulty equipment provided by RDS failed in combat. But the best part was his personal life. Guy's got a gambling problem, Danny told me, over beer at Murphy's Tavern. Owes about $2 million to some very unfriendly people in Atlantic City. That's why he's been skimming from the government contracts. How do you know all this? I've got a contact in the FBI white-collar crime division. Colin Reeve is about to have a very bad year. What about Sarah? She has no idea. As far as she knows, she's hit the jackpot with this guy. Perfect. I had Danny send an anonymous tip to the FBI about Colin's gambling debts and their connection to his government contract fraud. Then I had him send copies of all the evidence to the Boston Globe's investigative reporting team. Within 48 hours, the story broke. Defense contractor under federal investigation for fraud, tax evasion. Colin's assets were frozen pending the investigation. His company's government contracts were suspended, his passport was confiscated. And Sarah was stuck in Palm Beach with a man who could no longer afford to keep her in the style to which she'd briefly become accustomed. She called me that night. Jack, I need help. Hello to you too, Sarah. Colin's been arrested. All his accounts are frozen. I don't have any money, and the hotel's asking me to leave. Sounds like a personal problem. Jack, please, I know I hurt you, but I'm stranded here. You made your choice. Live with it. I can't afford a plane ticket home. Then I guess you're not coming home. What about Tommy? What about him? I want to see him. Funny thing about that, I've been served with divorce papers and a custody petition. Apparently my husband thinks I'm an unfit mother. You are an unfit mother. Fit mothers don't abandon their children. There was a long silence. I made a mistake, Sarah said finally. You made a series of calculated decisions. The only mistake was getting caught. Jack, I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry Colin turned out to be a fraud. You're sorry your meal ticket got canceled. But you're not sorry for what you did to Tommy and me. That's not true. Prove it. Come home, face the consequences of your actions, and try to rebuild a relationship with your son. But you don't get to waltz back into our lives just because your boyfriend turned out to be a criminal. I don't have anywhere else to go. You should have thought of that before you burned your bridges. I hung up. She called back 6 times. I didn't answer. 3 days later, Emma Caldwell was arrested in Miami on federal fraud charges. The FBI had tracked her down using the evidence I'd provided. A week after that, Sarah finally made it back to Massachusetts. She was staying at a motel on Route 1, according to Danny's sources, working as a waitress at a diner to pay for her room. Her fall from grace was complete. But I still wasn't satisfied. Tommy had been asking about Sarah constantly since the news broke about Colin's arrest. He'd seen the stories on the internet. Smart kid, impossible to keep him in the dark about everything. Is Mom really a criminal? He asked one night over dinner. Your mom made some bad choices, I said, but she's not a criminal. But she hired that woman to pretend to be her. That's fraud, right? I sighed. Yeah, buddy, that's fraud. Are you going to let her come home? Do you want her to come home? Tommy thought about it for a long time. I want my real mom to come home, but I don't think that person exists anymore. Out of the mouths of babes. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Sarah didn't contest anything. Not the custody arrangement, not the property division, not even the alimony waiver. She just wanted it over with. Margaret O'Sullivan was surprised. Most people fight harder for their children. Sarah's not most people. The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in October. Sarah would have to appear in court to make the divorce official. I hadn't seen her since that day on the beach in Florida, 3 months earlier. She looked terrible. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a cheap black dress that didn't fit well. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no expensive highlights. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd lost everything. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams. The hearing took 20 minutes. Judge Williams reviewed the terms of the divorce agreement, confirmed that both parties understood and agreed to the terms, and signed the decree. Mrs. Morrison, the judge said, you understand that you're waiving all rights to custody and visitation with your minor child? Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that this decision is permanent and cannot be reversed? Yes, Your Honor. Very well. The divorce is granted. Just like that, 15 years of marriage were over. Sarah tried to approach me as we left the courtroom, but I walked past her without a word. Outside, Margaret shook my hand. Congratulations, Jack. You're a free man. Thank you. What will you do now? Go home to my son. But Sarah was waiting by my car. Jack, please, just 5 minutes. I looked at this woman who'd once been the center of my world. What do you want, Sarah? I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just because I got caught. I'm listening. I was selfish and cruel. I hurt you and Tommy in ways that can't be undone. I thought I wanted a different life, but all I really wanted was to run away from responsibility. And now? Now I know that running away doesn't solve anything. It just creates new problems. What happened to Colin? Sarah's face crumpled. He's in federal prison awaiting trial. His lawyer says he'll probably get 10 to 15 years. And you? I'm working at a diner, living in a motel room, trying to figure out how to rebuild my life from nothing. Good. She looked shocked. Good? You destroyed our family because you thought you deserved better. Now you're learning what you actually deserve. Jack, I know I don't have the right to ask, but could I see Tommy just once to apologize? No. Please. You had your chance to be his mother. You chose Colin Reeve instead. Tommy's better off without you. He's my son. Biologically. But you're not his mother anymore. You gave up that right when you abandoned him. Sarah started crying. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Live with it. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the courthouse parking lot. That evening, Tommy and I ordered pizza and watched a horror movie together, just like we used to do when Sarah was deployed. Dad, he said during a commercial break. Yeah? Are you okay? I'm getting there, buddy. We both are. Do you think Mom will ever come back? I looked at my son, smart, resilient, better than both of his parents, and made a decision. I don't know, I said, but I know that whatever happens, you and I are going to be fine. Promise? Promise. 6 months later, Danny told me that Sarah had left Massachusetts. She'd gotten a job with a trucking company and was living somewhere in the Midwest. She'd never tried to contact Tommy again. Emma Caldwell was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Colin Reeve got 12 years for fraud and tax evasion. And Tommy and I started building a new life together. I never heard from Sarah again. Epilogue, 2 years later. Tommy was 14 now, taller than me and starting to look like a man. He played varsity baseball and still read Stephen King novels, though he'd moved on to the really scary ones. We'd moved to a bigger house on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I'd been promoted to regional manager at the hardware store, and Tommy was talking about maybe studying engineering in college. Dad, he said one Saturday morning over breakfast, I've been thinking about Mom. My stomach clenched. What about her? Do you think she's happy now? It was a more mature question than I'd expected from a 14-year-old. I don't know, I said honestly. I hope she's learned to be happy with herself instead of looking for someone else to make her happy. Do you ever miss her? I miss the person I thought she was, but that person probably never really existed. Tommy nodded thoughtfully. I used to be angry at her. Used to be? Now I just feel sorry for her. She gave up everything that mattered for something that didn't matter at all. Smart kid, smarter than his old man, certainly. You know what? I said. I think we're going to be just fine. I know we are, Dad. And looking at my son, confident, thoughtful, unbroken by his mother's betrayal, I knew he was right. Sarah Morrison had tried to destroy our family to get what she wanted. Instead, she'd just made us stronger.